He stepped into the room expecting nothing more than a routine moment, a simple hearing, a chance to finally speak for himself. But before he could utter a single word, eyes narrowed, whispers rose, and judgments formed faster than truth could defend him. In an instant, he wasn't seen as a teenager with a future, but as a problem, a threat, a stereotype they thought they already understood. Yet none of them knew who he really was, or what he was capable of. What happens when the world misjudges the one person who holds the power to change everything?
Before that day, his life was simple, quiet, predictable, almost unnoticed. Malik, a 17-year-old who preferred books over noise, spent most of his afternoons helping his grandmother at her small corner shop and studying late into the night. Teachers knew him as the kid who always sat in the back, head down, mind focused. Neighbors saw him as polite, soft-spoken, the kind of teenager who never gave anyone a reason to complain. He wasn't rich, powerful, or connected, but he carried something far more valuable, a sharp mind and a calm confidence he rarely showed. His dream was to become an attorney, a voice for people who had none, though most people who looked at him never imagined he had such ambition. That morning, he walked into the courthouse for a minor civil matter, expecting it to be quick and uneventful. He straightened his shirt, held his papers tight, and reminded himself to stay respectful. But from the moment he entered, he felt it. The lingering stares, the subtle whispers, the quiet assumptions that followed him like a shadow. Still he kept moving, unaware that a single misunderstanding was about to twist his quiet life into a storm he never asked for. He didn't know that someone in that room had already made up their mind about him, long before he ever spoke.
Malik took a seat in the back row, quietly reviewing his documents one last time. He wasn't nervous, just focused. But as he waited, he noticed a judge glance in his direction with a look that lingered too long, too sharp, as if she had already placed him in a category he didn't belong to. The courtroom murmured with small conversations, yet Malik felt as though every sound was pointed at him. A few people shifted away, others stared with subtle suspicion, and a bailiff eyed him as though expecting trouble before any had even begun. When Malik's name was called, he stood with calm determination. But before he could speak, the judge's tone cut through the room like a cold blade. She questioned him harshly about his appearance, his presence, even his intentions. None of it had anything to do with his case. It was as though she saw him not as an individual, but as a stereotype she'd grown far too comfortable dismissing. As she continued, her words carried an edge meant to belittle. She spoke over him, interrupted him, and denied him the chance to clarify simple facts. The courtroom watched in silence, some uncomfortable, some indifferent. Malik felt the familiar weight of being judged before being heard, but he refused to shrink under it. Inside, something sharper than fear began to rise. Then came the moment that shifted the entire room. The judge implied he couldn't possibly understand the legal language in front of him. Malik hesitated, just for a second. But that second was enough for whispers to stir again. People leaned forward, curious, doubtful, expecting him to fold. Instead, he opened his folder. He began referencing legal sections with precision, calm, steady, exact. Each sentence carried clarity and depth far beyond what anyone expected from a teenager standing alone in a courtroom. His voice didn't shake. His facts didn't bend. He dismantled each assumption she had quietly formed about him, one explanation at a time. But the more he spoke, the tighter the judge's jaw became. Humiliation flickered across her face, not because he was wrong, but because he was right. Because the very boy she dismissed was demonstrating a level of knowledge she hadn't anticipated. As she continued, the courtroom atmosphere shifted. The bailiff straightened. A woman in the front row tilted her head. Even the clerk paused mid-typing, realizing something was unfolding that no one had prepared for. Still, tension thickened. The judge's pride was wounded, and Malik sensed it. This was no longer just a misunderstanding. It was becoming a silent battle between truth and prejudice. And just when Malik thought reason would finally prevail, The judge made a decision that stunned the entire room, a decision that would push him into a confrontation far bigger than the case he came in for. What she did next would change everything.
The courtroom fell silent as the judge leaned forward, her expression tightening into something far harsher than simple authority. She slammed her gavel, not to restore order, but to regain control she felt slipping away. With an icy tone, she accused Malik of disruptive behavior and attempting to practice law without credentials. Gasps rippled through the room. Malik froze. Every eye shifted toward him, not with curiosity anymore, but with the raw sting of accusation. He tried to explain, calmly, respectfully, that he was simply defending himself, presenting facts he had every right to present. But the judge wasn't listening. She had made her choice. Her voice rose, sharp and cutting, ordering the bailiff to restrain him. Chairs scraped. Heavy boots approached. Malik's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He felt the officer's grip clamp around his arm, tight, unyielding. A familiar fear shot through him, the same fear too many young men like him had learned to carry. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't resisting. Yet the bailiff's hold tightened, as though preparing for a threat that never existed. The judge's words echoed through the courtroom. "Remove him. He needs to learn his place." The phrase hit harder than the grip on his arm. Learn his place? As if intelligence had no place coming from someone who looked like him. As if knowledge, confidence, and truth were threats instead of rights. But just as Malik felt the weight of injustice bearing down on him, something unexpected happened. A man in a suit, silent until now, stood up from the back. He requested to approach the bench, his voice steady but urgent. The room shifted again, tension coiling into something new, something electric. Malik looked up, breath trembling. He didn't know who he was, or why he was stepping forward, but the judge's eyes widened in a way that said this interruption mattered. And in that suspended moment, with the entire room watching, Malik realized something. The fight wasn't over. Not yet.
The man in the suit stepped forward with calm authority, introducing himself as a senior civil rights attorney who had been observing cases in the courtroom that morning. He requested permission to speak, something the judge reluctantly granted. With measured words, he explained that Malik had done nothing wrong, that citing legal statutes to defend himself was not practicing law, and that the judge's treatment had crossed a line far beyond courtroom procedure. His voice didn't rise. He didn't need to. Every sentence was a quiet indictment. Slowly, the tension began to shift. The bailiff released his grip. Several people in the gallery looked down, suddenly aware of the bias they'd silently allowed. And for the first time since entering the room, Malik felt the pressure on his chest loosen, just slightly. The attorney then did something no one expected. He filed an immediate motion on Malik's behalf, requesting oversight of the judge's conduct. The air in the courtroom turned heavy, not with hostility, but with accountability. The judge, caught between authority and exposure, reluctantly stepped back from her earlier order. Malik walked out of the courthouse shaken, but not defeated. He knew what had happened wasn't just about a misunderstanding or a bad day. It was about a system that too often saw young men like him as threats instead of citizens. Yet he also saw something else that day, proof that standing up, even alone, can make others stand up too. In the days that followed, Malik's story spread, not because he wanted fame, but because people recognized themselves, their sons, their brothers, in what he endured. His courage became a reminder of how quickly justice can bend, and how desperately it needs people willing to straighten it. Because the truth is simple. This wasn't just Malik's story. It's a story still unfolding around us every day. The question is, how many more times will it be ignored before we finally demand better?